స్టార్ట్ అయింది.
అయిందా?
డౌన్లోడ్ సెటప్ స్ట్రీమింగ్ సాఫ్ట్వేర్ పేజ్ టు స్ట్రీమింగ్ కీ ఇంటూ సాఫ్ట్వేర్ అంట.
అంటే
ఒక కీ ఇచ్చాడు. ఆ కీ చూడు వచ్చిందా? నాకేదో నోటిఫికేషన్ వచ్చింది లైవ్ స్టార్ట్ అయింది.
నోటిఫికేషన్ వచ్చింది. నువ్వు ఆ కీని ఓబీసీ దాంట్లో సెటప్ చేయాలా?
వచ్చిందిగా, వస్తుందిగా. ప్లే కొడుతున్నా చూడు. నువ్వు పెట్టినావా? నువ్వు స్టార్ట్ చేసినావా?
నేను ఇంకా ఏం దాన్ని ముట్టలేదు. నువ్వు ఫస్ట్ స్టార్ట్ చేస్తే
స్టార్ట్ చేశాను నేను. ఇక్కడ
లైవ్ కొట్టావా?
లైవ్
It was a Tuesday evening when my friend Lisa, who worked the closing shift at our family-owned coffee shop, nestled deep in the woods, miles away from the nearest town, experienced something she'll never forget. From the entries in her diary and CCTV visuals, I can piece together the horrifying events that unfolded that night. Lisa wrote about how the sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the nearly empty highway. The eerie silence of the forest was unsettling, and she was counting down the minutes until she could close up and head home. The coffee shop had an old-world charm with its wooden beams and cozy corners, but that night it felt suffocating. The wind howled outside, making the trees dance menacingly. She glanced at the clock. Only an hour left. Suddenly, the door creaked open and a man stepped in. He was tall, with a worn-out trench coat and a hat that shadowed his face. His presence immediately sent a chill down Lisa's spine. She forced a smile and asked what he'd like to order.
Good evening. What can I get for you?
She asked, her voice trembling slightly. He ordered a black coffee, his voice deep and raspy. As Lisa prepared his drink, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching her intently. She handed him the coffee.
Here you go,
she said, trying to maintain her composure.
Is there anything else you need?
She asked, their fingers brushing briefly. His touch was ice cold. The man took a seat in the far corner, away from the light. He didn't drink his coffee, just sat there, staring into the dark woods outside. Lisa tried to busy herself with closing tasks, but her eyes kept drifting back to him. The minutes dragged by, each tick of the clock amplifying her unease. Suddenly, the lights flickered and a gust of wind blew through the shop, rattling the windows. Lisa turned to see the man still in his seat, now staring directly at her. Gathering her courage, she walked over to him. She asked,
Sir, are you okay?
Her voice barely above a whisper. He slowly lifted his head, and for the first time, she saw his face. His eyes were hollow, and his skin looked like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. He whispered something under his breath, words she couldn't quite make out. Leaning in closer, she heard him say,
They're coming for you.
Lisa's blood ran cold. Before she could respond, he vanished. One moment he was there. The next, he was gone. Panic set in. She looked around frantically, but there was no sign of him. The door hadn't opened, and there were no footsteps leading away. It was as if he had evaporated into thin air. The shop felt colder, the shadows longer. Lisa grabbed her phone to call for help.
Damn it, not now.
She cursed, shaking the phone in frustration as there was no signal. The landline was dead too. She was completely isolated, miles away from anyone who could help. Her heart pounded as she heard a faint whispering coming from the woods. She bolted the door and turned off the lights, hoping to hide from whatever was out there. the whispering grew louder, now accompanied by the sound of footsteps crunching on the gravel outside. She peeked through the window, but saw nothing. Suddenly, the whispering stopped, replaced by a deafening silence. Lisa held her breath, listening intently. Then, without warning, the windows shattered and a freezing wind swept through the shop, knocking over chairs and tables. She ducked behind the counter, her heart racing. The cold wind seemed to carry voices, eerie and distant. Lisa heard her name being called, softly at first, then louder and more insistent.
Who's there? What do you want?
She shouted, her voice cracking. It was the same raspy voice of the man from earlier. Gathering all her courage, she stood up and faced the room. The cold had intensified, and a thick fog was seeping in through the broken windows. In the midst of the fog, she saw them, shadowy figures moving slowly towards her. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their whispers filled her head, making it hard to think. She backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The figures closed in, their hands reaching out, cold and clammy. Lisa felt a sharp pain in her chest, as if her heart was being squeezed. The figures surrounded her, their whispers now a cacophony of terror. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The last thing she saw was their glowing eyes, full of malice. When Lisa came to, the shop was empty again, the fog gone. She was lying on the floor, gasping for breath. She looked around, disoriented. Everything was as it had been, except for the shattered windows and the lingering chill in the air. She stumbled to her feet, her body aching. As she made her way to the door, she saw something written on the wall in what looked like blood. "You're next." Her blood ran cold. She had to get out of there, but the door wouldn't budge. She whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. Desperation set in. She ran to the back door, but it was locked too. Panic surged through her. She could hear the whispering again, closer this time. She felt a cold hand on her shoulder and spun around. She screamed into the emptiness, but no one was there. The room started to spin, the voices growing louder. Lisa dropped to her knees, clutching her head. Suddenly, everything went silent. She looked up and saw the man standing in front of her, his hollow eyes boring into hers. He smiled, a cold, cruel smile, and whispered,
"It's over."
The last thing she felt was a searing pain in her chest, then darkness. When they found her the next morning, she was lying on the floor, lifeless, with a look of pure terror on her face. They said it was a heart attack, but I knew the truth. From Lisa's diary, I could tell the man, the shadows. They were real, and now they were coming for whoever stepped into that cursed coffee shop on the highway, surrounded by nothing but miles of woods. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more exciting content. If you have your own terrifying experiences, send them in, and maybe you'll hear your story next. Until then, stay safe, and remember, some stories are better left alone. See you in the next video. Bye!
I never believed in ghosts. They were tales to scare kids, stories shared around campfires. But that changed one night on a lonely highway surrounded by woods. My name is Noah, and I was 40 years old when it happened. It was late, around midnight, and I was driving home after a long business trip. I chose the shortcut through the woods to save time. The highway was desolate, with towering trees on both sides, their branches casting eerie shadows under the dim moonlight. The road stretched out for 100 miles, and I barely saw another car. It was just me, the asphalt, and the forest. As I approached a small gas station at the edge of the woods, I saw her. She was standing by the road, her figure illuminated by the faint glow of the gas station lights. She was beautiful, with long dark hair and pale skin, wearing an old-fashioned dress that seemed out of place. She looked lost and desperate. Against my better judgment, I pulled over and rolled down the window. "Are you okay?" I asked. She nodded, her eyes wide and pleading.
Can you give me a lift? My car broke down, and I need to get home.
She said in a soft, almost melodic voice. Something about her seemed off, but I couldn't just leave her there. "Sure, hop in," I said. She got in, and as she did, I felt a sudden chill in the air. The temperature seemed to drop, and I could feel goosebumps on my arms. We drove in silence for a while. She didn't say much, just stared out the window. I tried to make small talk, but she only gave vague answers. Her presence was unsettling, but I shrugged it off as my imagination running wild. Halfway through the woods, the car started acting up. The engine sputtered and the headlights flickered. I pulled over, cursing under my breath. "Great, just what I needed," I muttered. I got out to check under the hood, leaving her inside. The woods were deathly silent, not even a rustle of leaves or a chirp of insects. It was as if the forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. As I fiddled with the engine, I heard a soft humming coming from the car. It was her. She was humming a tune that sent shivers down my spine. It was haunting, almost hypnotic. I glanced back, and for a moment, I thought I saw something else in the car with her, a shadowy figure in the back seat. I blinked, and it was gone. My heart pounded in my chest as I slammed the hood shut and got back in. We continued driving, but the car felt different, almost alive. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel her eyes on me, watching my every move. I tried to focus on the road, but the atmosphere was suffocating. Suddenly, she spoke.
Do you believe in ghosts, Noah?
Her voice was calm, but it sent a jolt of fear through me. How did she know my name? I hadn't told her. I tried to keep my voice steady. No, I don't. Why?
You should. They're real, you know. Very real.
She smiled, a cold, eerie smile that chilled me to the bone. Panic set in. I needed to get her out of the car. I mumbled something about needing to stop for a moment and pulled over again. "I'm sorry, but I can't take you any further," I said, trying to sound firm. She didn't react at first, just stared at me with those piercing eyes. Then she started laughing, a high-pitched, maniacal laugh that echoed through the woods. I felt my blood run cold. Before I could react, she lunged at me, her face twisted into something monstrous, her eyes black as coal. I fought back, struggling to open the door and escape. I managed to break free and ran into the woods, a high-pitched, maniacal laugh that echoed through the woods. I felt my blood run cold. Before I could react, she lunged at me, her face twisted into something monstrous, her eyes black as coal. I found a small clearing and struggling to open the door and escape, hoping she wouldn't find me. The woods were still and silent again, but I could feel her presence. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. It felt like an eternity. I finally gathered the courage to make my way back to the highway. My car was still there, but she was gone. I got in and drove as fast as I could, not stopping until I reached home. When I got home, I locked the doors and checked every room, but the feeling of dread didn't leave me. I couldn't sleep that night, haunted by her face, her laughter. I knew I'd never forget that night. The next morning, I did some research. I found out that several people had disappeared on that stretch of highway over the years, their cars found abandoned in the woods. Some say they saw a woman hitchhiking near the gas station before they vanished. I don't drive that route anymore. I avoid the woods altogether. And every time I see a hitchhiker, I feel a chill down my spine. I can't forget what happened, and I never will. Some say it's just a legend, a story to keep people from picking up strangers. But I know the truth. I met her, and I'll never forget the night I gave a ghost a ride. I hope you enjoyed this spine-chilling tale. Remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that could be real. If you have your own terrifying experiences, send them in, and who knows, maybe you'll hear your story next. Until then, stay safe, and be careful who you pick up on the road. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more exciting content. See you in the next video. Bye.
I grew up in an old-fashioned villa, a house with creaking floorboards and antique furniture that whispered stories of the past. My childhood room, tucked away in a corner of the second floor, often felt isolated, a place where shadows seemed to linger just a bit longer. I was 10 years old when it happened, a night like any other except for the chilling encounter that still haunts me to this day. I remember the sensation of weight on my mattress, as if someone had sat down at the foot of my bed. I opened my eyes, the room illuminated by the pale moonlight seeping through the curtains. There he was, an eyeless boy, his empty sockets staring directly at me, holding a small, intricately carved box. Frozen in fear, I couldn't move or scream. The eyeless boy seemed to study me, tilting his head slightly as if contemplating something. Then, without a sound, he vanished, leaving only an imprint on my bed where he had been sitting. The box he held was nowhere to be found. For years I tried to convince myself it was a nightmare, a figment of my imagination. But the feeling of dread lingered, a constant reminder of that night. I never spoke of it, burying the memory deep within, hoping it would fade with time. Years later, when I was in my 20s, I brought my girlfriend, Emily, to my parents' house. She was napping in my old room one afternoon while I ran some errands. When I returned, I found her pale and trembling, her eyes wide with fear. Emily recounted how she had woken up to see an eyeless boy clinging to the wall. His empty sockets stared right through her, and she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. When she blinked, he was gone. Chills ran down my spine as she described the apparition. It was the same boy I had seen all those years ago. The memory I had buried deep within came rushing back, and I realized that what I had
My name is
seen
Jeff,
was real.
and I live in
I
Dayton,
told Emily
Ohio.
about my
I never
experience,
considered
and
myself
we
a
both felt
superstitious
sense of
person.
unease,
I'm a
as if the
logical
boy's
guy,
spirit still
always
lingered in
have
the
been.
house.
But something
We
happened to
decided
me
to move
last
out of
year
my
that I
parents'
can't
place and
explain.
find a new
Something
home,
that still sends
hoping to
chills
leave
down
the
my
ghostly
spine when I
encounters
think about it.
behind.
It was a
Years
normal
passed,
day,
and
just
Emily and
like
I
any
got
other,
married.
but it
We
ended
had
with
a
an
beautiful
experience
daughter,
I'll never
Lily, who
forget.
was 2 years old.
I was driving
Life
home with my
seemed to be
3-year-old
settling into a
son, Miles,
comfortable routine.
in the back seat.
But then,
It
strange
was a
things
bright,
started
sunny
happening
afternoon,
again.
and we had
I
just
moved back
finished
into
visiting my
parents' house
parents.
temporarily while
Miles
our
was
new home
happily
was being
singing one of his
renovated.
favorite nursery
Lily
rhymes,
slept in
and
my
I was
old
enjoying
room,
the peace and
the very
quiet
room
of the
where I had
drive.
seen the eyeless boy. One night, I heard her talking to someone. At first, I thought she was talking to her stuffed animals. But when I asked her
As
who
we
she was
passed by a
speaking to,
modest
she said,
cemetery on the outskirts of town, something strange happened.
can't find his
Miles
mommy.
suddenly stopped
My
singing.
heart raced
I
as
glanced at him
remembered
in the
eyeless
rearview
boy.
mirror, expecting
I
to
asked
see
her
him
to
dozing
describe the
off.
boy,
But
and she
instead,
said,
he was staring intently
He has
out the
no eyes,
window.
Daddy.
Then, out of nowhere,
looks scary,
he pointed
but he
toward
just
the
wants his
cemetery
mommy.
and said, "Look at all
Emily
those
and I
people."
exchanged
I
worried
frowned and
glances,
turned my head to see what he
realizing
was
that the
talking
spirit of
about.
the eyeless
The cemetery
boy
was
had found
small,
our daughter.
almost more like a
Desperate to
garden,
protect
with only a
Lily,
few.
we sought help from a local priest who was known for his work with exorcisms. He agreed to come to our house and perform a blessing, hoping to rid our home of the restless spirit. The priest walked through
The cemetery was small, almost more like a garden, with only a few...
We sought help. Reached Lily's room. The air grew cold, and a heavy silence fell upon us. The priest's prayers grew louder, echoing through the house. Suddenly, the room filled with a chilling wind, and we heard a child's sobs. The priest continued his prayers, commanding the spirit to leave. After what felt like an eternity, the sobbing stopped, and the room grew still. The priest assured us that the spirit was gone, but advised us to move out as soon as possible. We packed our belongings and left the house that very night, determined to leave the memories and the ghost behind. We moved into our new home, a place filled with light and warmth, far away from the old villa. Lily never mentioned the boy again, and the eerie encounters became a distant memory, a chilling chapter of our past. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about the eyeless boy and the box he held. What was inside it? Why did he come to me? The answers remain a mystery, a haunting reminder that some spirits never truly rest. So, if you have a story that chills your bones, send it in. Maybe why you'll hear it narrated here next. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more exciting content. See you in the next video. Bye.
పొద్దున 5 వరకు నడుస్తూ ఉంటాయి. పొద్దున 5 వరకు నడుస్తూ ఉంటాయి అంట.
My name is Jack Thompson, and I'm 45 years old. After losing my previous job, I was desperate for work. That's how I found myself taking a job as a night security guard at the Westbrook Mall. Little did I know my first night would be my last. On my first night, the mall was eerily quiet after closing hours. The only sounds were the hum of the air conditioning and the faint buzz of the fluorescent lights. As I made my rounds, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the occasional creak of the building settling. I tried to keep my mind occupied, thinking about how I'd get used to the quiet soon enough. Around midnight, I heard a strange noise coming from one of the toy stores. It sounded like the giggling of a small child echoing through the empty mall. My heart pounded as I approached the store. The giggling stopped abruptly, and all I could hear was my own breathing. I shone my flashlight into the store but saw nothing unusual. I continued my patrol, trying to convince myself that it was just my imagination. But as the night went on, the noises grew louder and more frequent. I decided to check the CCTV room to see if the cameras had picked up anything unusual. As I reviewed the footage, I saw a small, shadowy figure darting through the hallways. The figure appeared to be a little girl running and giggling. I watched in disbelief as she seemed to vanish and reappear in different parts of the mall. My hands trembled as I switched between cameras, following her erratic movements. She seemed to be playing some kind of twisted game. I decided to confront whatever was haunting the mall. I left the CCTV room and headed towards where I last saw her. The giggling started again, louder and more menacing. As I walked, the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move on their own. My flashlight barely cut through the darkness. I reached the center of the mall and stopped. The giggling turned into a high-pitched laugh, echoing around me. I felt a cold breeze brush past me. Suddenly, all the mall entrances slammed shut with a deafening bang. I was trapped. I ran to the doors, but they wouldn't budge. Panic set in as I realized I was locked inside with something unearthly. I heard the child's laughter coming from behind me. I spun around and saw her standing just a few feet away. Her eyes were dark voids, and her smile was twisted and unnatural. I screamed and backed away, stumbling over my own feet. She vanished again, leaving only the echo of her laughter. I scrambled to my feet and ran back to the CCTV room. I locked the door behind me and tried to catch my breath. My hands shook uncontrollably. I watched the monitors, hoping to see something that would explain what was happening. The cameras showed nothing but empty hallways. As I sat in the CCTV room, the lights flickered, and I heard faint footsteps approaching. The sound grew louder, like someone running towards the door. The footsteps stopped suddenly, and there was a loud banging on the door. My heart raced as I watched the doorknob twist and turn violently. I backed away from the door, my eyes wide with fear. The banging stopped, but the silence was even more terrifying. I knew she was still out there, waiting. I decided to make a run for it. I burst out of the CCTV room and sprinted down the hallways, the child's laughter echoing all around me. As I ran, I saw store mannequins turning their heads to watch me. Their eyes seemed to follow my every move, making my blood run cold. I tripped over something and fell hard on the floor. When I looked up, I saw the little girl standing over me, her eyes burning with an unnatural light. I scrambled to my feet and ran again, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel her presence right behind me, getting closer with every step. I finally reached the main entrance and pounded on the glass, screaming for help. The doors remained locked, and I could see my breath fogging up the glass in the cold air. In a last-ditch effort, I ran to the maintenance room, hoping to find another exit. The room was dark and cluttered, with shadows lurking in every corner. As I searched for a way out, I heard a faint humming. I turned and saw the little girl again, standing in the doorway, her smile growing wider. I grabbed a wrench and swung it wildly, hoping to scare her away. She didn't flinch, just kept staring at me with those empty eyes. In a blind panic, I threw the wrench and ran past her, heading for the emergency exit. The door was locked, and I felt her cold breath on my neck. I turned to face her, my back against the door. She reached out a hand, and as her fingers touched my skin, I felt an icy pain shoot through me. That's when I blacked out. When I came to, it was morning, and the mall was open again. I was found by the morning staff, unconscious by the emergency exit. I quit that day, vowing never to return. I handed in my resignation first thing in the morning. There was no way I was going back. I needed answers, so I did some research online. I discovered that a young girl had died in the mall years ago. She had been electrocuted in a photo booth due to faulty wiring. The mall was said to be haunted by her restless spirit, forever trapped in the place where she died. I shuddered, realizing I had encountered her ghost. I never set foot in that mall again, and I never will. The little girl's laughter still haunts my dreams, a reminder of the night I barely escaped with my life. So, if you have a story that chills your bones, send it in. Maybe you will hear it narrated here next. But until then, stay safe and heed my warning. Some things are better left undisturbed. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more exciting content. See you in the next video. Bye.
Shh. Come closer. You're about to step into a world unlike any other. Turn off the lights. Let the darkness be your only companion. Sit alone. No one else should hear what you're about to experience. Put on your headphones. Let my voice surround you. Turn the volume up. Let every sound seep into your mind. Immerse yourself into the world of Creepy Man. He's waiting for you.
I've never been one to believe in ghosts or supernatural occurrences. Life was busy and modern, far removed from the realm of the inexplicable. But one night, something happened that changed my perception forever. My name is Arvi, a 30-year-old professional, And this is the story of the night I encountered something I still struggle to comprehend. It was a Friday night, and I had just bought the latest PS5 game release. The excitement of diving into this new adventure was all-consuming. I settled into my plush couch, controller in hand, and lost myself in the virtual world. Time slipped away unnoticed, and before I knew it, the game was almost done. The clock showing 2 a.m. In my rush of excitement and focus on the game, I had completely forgotten about my new bike parked in the cellar. Ever since I got it, I had been paranoid about the stray cats in the parking area scratching the seat. Covering the bike each night had become a ritual, one I couldn't afford to skip. Hurriedly, I paused the game and grabbed the bike cover. The apartment was eerily silent as I made my way to the cellar. The hallway lights flickered slightly, casting long, dancing shadows that added to the sense of unease I tried to shake off. The cellar was deserted at this hour, half of the lights turned off to conserve energy. The darkness seemed almost tangible, pressing in from all sides. My footsteps echoed unnervingly in the empty space as I approached my bike. I bent down to cover the bike, and that's when I heard it. A faint whisper, almost like someone calling my name. I froze, every hair on my body standing on end. The sound was so soft, so menacingly familiar, yet completely out of place in the empty cellar. Trying to brush it off as my imagination, I continued with the task. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Panic surged through me as I glanced around, but there was no one in sight. The silence that followed was even more terrifying. Suddenly, a chilling draft swept through the cellar.